Tropical storm Erika left death and destruction behind in the Eastern Caribbean last Wednesday. The island of Dominica, with just over 72,000 people, is now left to pick up the pieces. After the tropical storm devastated houses, roadways and other infrastructure, Dominicans have been plunged into mourning, even as they try to move on after Erika. At least 20 lives were lost, with another 25 reported missing, and that figure could climb even higher. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, in his address to the nation on Friday, expressed hope that Dominicans would rebound from the catastrophe quickly.
It is with a heavy heart that I address you tonight. You can well imagine the hell it has been for me since I heard of the passing of Tropical Storm Erika and the damage it has done to my dear people and our beloved country, the Commonwealth of Dominica. But we all have to pull ourselves together and steady ourselves to ensure that we weather the storm and rebound as a nation in rapid time.
Prime Minister Skerrit, who was at an international conference in China at the time his homeland was hit by the natural disaster, expressed thanks to international and regional partners who are assisting the recovery efforts and who have pledged their support.
My depression was lifted by the thought that the sentiments and agreements made at the conference in Macau, China, clearly indicated that assistance will be forthcoming to help us recover from this natural disaster which has befallen Dominica. Indeed, such help soon materialized when I arrived in St. Lucia and fully realized that Dominica's recently extended and renovated Douglas Charles Airport was closed due to the severe damage inflicted by Tropical Storm Erika. How would I get home? I asked myself. But within hours of my arrival, the Honorable Kamala Persad Bissessa, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, made arrangements for a helicopter to take me directly to Dominica. Since then, member states of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the OECS, neighboring members of the overseas regions of France, fellow members of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, and regional organizations like the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency have responded positively to our plight and made it possible for many of us to fly around the country to gauge the extent of the damage.
Mr. Skerrit describes the devastation and tragedy left behind by Tropical Storm Erika as heart-wrenching.
The extent of the devastation is monumental. It is far worse than expected. It is true that many communities like Petit-Savan, Dalis and Colibri have been swamped and are still cut off from the rest of Dominica, but nearly every community has been hit. There is extensive damage across our small island after floods swamped villages, destroyed homes and wiped out roads. Some communities are no longer recognizable. It was a harrowing experience for me to see suffering on such a grand scale. My heart and soul grieve for you, those affected. Of greatest concern, however, is the loss of life. So far, we have confirmed that at least 20 citizens have died and some are missing. This is heart-wrenching. I give you my pledge that we shall not cease until contact is made with every community and a full account is given of every single missing person.
He says every effort will be made to provide burial aid as well as some sort of closure to the families of the missing.
We shall rebuild Dominica in honor of those who lost their lives in this particular tragedy. In the hours and days ahead, respective parliamentary representatives will be meeting with families to discuss and formalize arrangements for burial of those who succumbed, as well as to help provide adequate care for the injured. Local, regional, and international agencies have already deployed representatives in the field to assess and evaluate damage and determine the nature of relief and assistance that would be forthcoming. In a nutshell, to all impacted by this tragedy, help is underway.
As if being battered by Tropical Storm Erika wasn't bad enough, Dominica is facing the possibility of running out of food. According to former National Disaster Risk Management Coordinator for Dominica, Cecil Shillingford, shops on the island are running low on food supplies. He says the basic needs are in greater demand after many communities remain isolated due to roads and bridges being washed away when the storm's heavy rains ravaged the country last week. Shillingford laments that there is no organized way of getting food and other basic supplies to persons who've been isolated. The former Disaster Risk Management Coordinator is calling for assistance to be organized in short order as homes and shops are critically low on food. He additionally notes that with Dominica becoming charity for the rest of the globe, donated items need to match needs. He says it's better for persons who want to assist to donate cash because managing that is easier. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis has allocated $1 million Eastern Caribbean dollars in humanitarian relief aid to Dominica, which was badly damaged by the passage of Tropical Storm Erika last week. Prime Minister of the Twin Island Federation, Dr. Timothy Harris, made the disclosure at a special session of the St. Kitts and Nevis Cabinet on Friday. Prime Minister Harris says further assistance to aid Dominica will follow a needs assessment currently being carried out by the Caribbean Disaster and Emergency Management Agency, CEDEMA. Senator Wendy Phipps will coordinate St. Kitts' and Nevis's national effort in support of Dominica. Meanwhile, the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, has established an emergency relief grant of $200,000 to Dominica. The CDB made the announcement through a statement in which it noted that the grant is being provided in accordance with its disaster management strategy and operational guidelines. The funds are aimed at assisting the country in its response to the disaster. Vice President of Operations at CDB, Patricia McKenzie, says the bank is in touch with the government of Dominica and it is working with CEDEMA as well as standing by to provide concessionary financing in addition to the grant to help the country rebuild. And more of Dominica's CARICOM neighbors are coming to its aid. Barbados is mobilizing support for its neighbor, which is recovering from the onslaught of Tropical Storm Erika. The update was provided by Prime Minister Frundle Stewart, who is also the chairman of CARICOM. According to Mr. Stewart, he has already been in touch with his Dominican counterpart, Roosevelt Scarrett.
Our thoughts and our praise go out to the people of Dominica. I'll be keeping the country informed on Barbados' initiatives. But I can say on this occasion that we have already mobilized assistance for Dominica. I was in touch with the Minister of Home Affairs this morning, with the Chief of Staff of the Defense Force. We were in touch with the RSS on Friday, and everything that we can do from our end is being done to ease the stress and the discomfort of the people of Dominica.
Now, given the level of devastation, Prime Minister Stewart again argued the need to revisit the GDP per capita measure for CARICOM states.
It is important that some other index be used. And whether it be Minister Sinclair or myself or Minister Lowe or Minister Essex, whoever goes abroad and has to speak on these matters, Minister Seeley, whoever goes, we make the point that rather than using GDP per capita, we should use an index called the Vulnerability Index, because we are all very vulnerable to natural disasters.